So you had
How you doing, Ken?
hey,
How's everybody
Ralph.
doing?
What's up, Ralph?
Another day, another. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to getting out of this thing.
Yeah, it looks like there's now a plan to open up, right? The state. That I think that's what you mean.
Does that mean you could open the float tank
I
soon?
assume at some point. I don't know what point though. I don't think they've been that clear. I think Murphy has said something about a plan in the works more than any definite kinds of businesses that will first be allowed to open.
Yeah, I was intrigued by a story I heard this morning that from an autopsy getting done now from a death from February 1 in Seattle, this person had died of COVID February 1. We just didn't know about it then.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's interesting that I think it's actually it was around a lot before, way before we closed the country and did this social distancing. And I don't know, what I mean? Like when we didn't know it was here, we weren't panicking. But when we knew it was here, we started panicking. Now, who knows what's gonna happen.
Well, this is the 19th strain of the same that's been around since the 50s, but it's gotten so that we don't have anything to battle it.
Yeah, I think the 19 is for the year
Yeah, it's for the year.
2019.
Yeah, it's for the year.
Oh, it's for the year, because I
Yeah.
heard it's for the strain.
Yeah, no, there's probably been a lot of COVIDs, but
Shouldn't listen to
yeah.
Kellyanne ever.
Yeah, well, Fox News, Pam,
I'm not a Fox News. I'm not a news
Fake
person.
news. Fox News, fake news.
fake news, yeah.
That's what Trump always says.
Yeah, not with Fox though. They're
Yeah, they're the truth.
No, he doesn't like CNN.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for this to turn on. One of my locations got the PPP today. I'm excited.
No, that's really good.
Yeah, I'm what I mean? It's like I'm waiting for the other three, and if that happens, I feel like I don't know. Definitely in the next 8 weeks, I think we're gonna turn it on.
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't heard back yet on the payroll protection plan loan application that I submitted.
It was weird. Just like last night, they sent me like a confirmation, like 11:40. I was sleeping. I did it this morning at 6. So I filled it out. I signed it because I had already all the applications in, but this was like whatever. I signed it. I hit send, and by 10:30 in the morning, the funds were transferred. I'm like, it's amazing how it works. Like, I have an SBA loan out on the other building, and wow, the paperwork that I took to get there, whereas the government is really just giving money away with this one.
Yeah, I went through the SBA too. That was quite a process. Took over a year to get that loan done.
It's just I hope that as a country we can rebound from all this money. You know what I mean? These trillions being given out, billions, whatever they are.
Mm.
Sometimes I think, was this all kind of like a game for Trump and his guys? And like these stimulus checks I heard went out with Trump's face on it. Trump's giving out all this money, and I feel like he's doing a good job. But is it a thing of they're kind of fluffing it a little bit, giving everybody money? Come November, just vote for me.
Yeah. I always wondered like whether I would consider myself kind of like, I don't know, like middle of the aisle, but like I've never identified really strongly with any position, and I think like I can listen to a Fox News report and get some good points out of it. I think that probably has something to do what we're talking about tonight. If you put everything in a category of good or bad, or just don't give yourself the ability to see that there's a vast expanse between Well, I don't think I'd even say it that way. I was going to say there's a vast expanse between good and bad. It's more like better, like we said earlier, they're just not connected the way people think they're connected, right? So
Yeah. It's funny. That's like good and bad. You know what I mean? So it's like, I like the way in chapter 3 how a shaman doesn't waste his energy and thinking, am I doing something good? He should be living life as good, you know?
yeah, because what is it? I mean, like what those kinds of linguistic or language tools can be very limited. If you're identifying something as good or bad, you don't have any ability to see a continuum of possibilities. And so one of the linguistic tools that chapter 3 introduces is, well, you could think of things in terms of advantageous or disadvantageous. Is it bad to lie? Well, you could say, oh yeah, it's bad to lie. But I could say that if I lie, it's disadvantageous because it like divides my thinking.
Again, an interesting way to look at it. It's different.
Yeah, I think one that's more, well, there's not, maybe it's the beginning of chapter 2 says something like the shaman pays attention to the world between the shadows. I might not be getting that just right, but something like that. Well, okay. I think that there's a world between the shadows in the sense that there's things we can observe that we're not used to observing because we're so locked and loaded with one way of looking at things. If you're locked and loaded with one way of looking at things, how are you going to see other things? Those things we call perspectives or even assemblage points, that they're potentially infinite. But if you want to have just one and just hold on to one, well, I think that's okay, if that's what you want to do. But I think it's really limited.
How did Jesse make out with moving his assemblage point? Did he get any movement? I felt like at the end of yesterday's conversation, like a real side of him started to come out. He was cursing a little bit, but I think he started to actually be himself, saying "fuck this" or whatever.
I don't think he's on, or if he's on, maybe he's on by phone. I don't think he's on. We could ask him when he gets on.
I think they have limited internet there right now.
Okay. What's up, Pat Jones?
Hey, Ken, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
What's been going on with
Glad I
you?
could join you again tonight.
Well, good. Yeah, me too. What's happening?
Living the dream.
Family's good?
So, I don't know that I really understood that assemblage point movement. Can
Okay,
you talk about that a little bit more?
Okay, well, yeah, fine. Remember, we're building a model here, or we're not. We're giving you a way to see thought as having a direction. Okay. You, Pat Jones, as a soul, necessarily expresses through the body, right?
Okay.
But that expression, that call it interface between you as a soul and you as a body, is an interface of thoughts you have, memories you have. You got it so far?
Yes.
Right? Because, how do how are you going to interpret anything? How do you deal with what you think Denise is doing, or what your colleagues are doing, or what you observe in your family going on? That observation is dealt with at the level of what you believe is real. Okay. Okay. So you've got a way of looking at things. You've got a way of assembling the world. You and I have talked about this. Roughly stated, to me, it's I don't know. It's got like an attack component to it, right? Something like that.
Yes.
Well, that's a way that you assemble the world. As Pat Jones, the soul, communicates through the body, Pat Jones necessarily or expresses through the body. Pat Jones and Ken Kaplan and Elise and Ralph and Pam and everybody else. We're using the things we believe is real to observe the world. But from that point on, our very actions are driven from that. You following so far, Pat?
Yes.
So you've got this way that you assemble the world. You can think of it more broad than a point of view, because I'm talking about the very way that you look at everything. And if you're looking at the upside down pyramid here, you could see that at the bottom, the very bottom, the super self meta programs, call it the soul, call it the other, expressing through the self meta programs. So now we're at the point of where the interface of the soul is with the things that Pat Jones believes is real. Okay. And
Yep.
what does Pat Jones believe is real? I mean, some of that you've taken a look at in your rewrite, right?
So I guess all right, and I guess maybe I'm thinking of it visually, and I understand, when we talked about it, I guess down in Mexico, the assemblage point is somewhere, well, it's right in the, like the solar plexus, right? If we had a visual.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It makes sense because energetically.
Well, hold on a second here, Ken. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I think he's actually talking about if it's Carlos Castaneda's conversation about assemblage point, it's going to be in the luminous egg, right? That force of energy, that field of energy around us, and it's behind us and off the right shoulder, I believe, is the perception of where that assemblage point is coming from. I think that's where he was trying to go. Pat, is that what you were trying to talk about?
Yes. Yeah. That's. Yeah. And that, okay. So, and maybe that's. I'm glad you brought that up, Paul. So you're telling me it's behind me, and well, all right. You're saying.
If you were going to give it a visual perspective, right?
Yes.
That's where they talk about it residing, is off to the up above on behind the right shoulder. But another thing I wanted to share real quickly is the difference between point of view and assemblage point is that the point of view is happening at the logical part of this pyramid here, where you're absorbing information and thinking about what somebody said and saying, well, rationally, that sounds pretty viable. That's a point of view. But when Ken's pointing at the self-meta program at the belief level, that is where your assemblage point is being assembled. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, that does help. So I guess maybe I'm going back to, maybe I was just using the visual because I'm trying to think of it as, I'm trying to adjust that assemblage point, my own assemblage point, based on what, Ken has said about the way the way I approach the world is kind of an attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that what I've been seeing in myself is that I set that up in my mind. So if I anticipate a conversation coming, I set it up. So am I making sense?
You got to
is
say,
that clear?
when you anticipate
So,
a conversation coming.
Stop. You're off in Never Land here. It's way easier than that, really. Look, when you were a little kid, you were told that this is how things are in your family.
Yes.
Mom's in charge, dad's in charge, the sisters are in charge, whatever. There's a series of things that you were told that were real, and you dealt with them as real. It doesn't mean that they were real, doesn't mean they were good things, bad things, nothing. It's just that they were things. Now, that set of things formed a basis for which well, let's say that you use to form your idea of what the world is. So, if Vanessa were to put little Lukey doodles on the call here, we would see a little guy who's doing exactly that thing. And what he's doing is that he's starting to understand what it means to have a good time, what it means to be able to get his way, what it means to be able to control people around him, what it means to be able to communicate with them, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, his overall, he seems to be a pretty happy little guy. Now, there's also places though where he's got some pain that has gone on because of colitis and his stomach is upset. So in his life, he's going to have a little bit of pain and a little bit of pleasure. Don't we all?
Mm-hmm.
However, those things all go together to make up how he views the world. And from where he views the world, he's going to view the world from within that thing that he's building now, just as you did, just as I did, just as everybody in the frickin' world did. Now, we call that an assemblage point because it's all encompassing. It's all of the things that we treat as real, that we personally treat as real, not that is real, that we personally treat as real, that we know and we interact with as real. For instance, you know about pencils and pens and blue ink and T-squares and triangles and little things that move angles and all. You understand that stuff. I have no idea about that, but if you want me to design a garden that has a Mexican style, but with a Japanese style, but with Mexican plants, I can do that for you. But I cannot understand worth a damn how to take those tools that you use as an everyday thing and use them, because that's not in my assemblage point. I've become familiar with those things, but that doesn't mean I use them or that I understand them or that I use them. I would have to change my idea of who I am in terms of how I design a garden in order to design like you do. I don't see it the same way that you do. I see it in big blobs and globs and so forth, like as if I'm Japanese or something. I don't see it in an ordered Western architectural fashion. Now, those are two differences in assemblage points. Can I move to yours? Well, enough to understand it, I can. Can you move to mine? Enough to understand it, you can. Can you ever take on mine? If you did, then you'd become what I have become as well. Or if I were to actually take on yours, I would become an architect. So everybody has their own assemblage point, their own point where they view the world from. The question isn't about whether or not you have one, it's whether or not you can do anything with it. I mean, if you've got one, aren't you clever?
Okay.
Wow, I got a nose too. I also got an asshole. I think everybody does. But anyway, it's not either here nor there. What really counts is that I can do something with my nose. I can smell things. With my asshole, it's something else. But it's not quite the same deal. It isn't. Everybody has an assemblage point. Can you pick up other ones? Can you look at somebody else's life and say, okay, I can understand how their programming got them to right there. That's always going to be a problem. That's what Ralph was talking about with Jesse. He says, okay, I think I can see Jesse doing a thing because Ralph could see himself making those movements. That's all it took for Ralph. For Jesse, it may take an entirely different atomic bomb. Who knows? I don't. But maybe Jesse does, or maybe Ralph does, but I certainly don't. But the thing is that Jesse will have to change how he sees things if he's going to stay here. He's going to have to assemble a different world. If he goes back to Bloomsburg, he can continue with the same world that he already has. That one seems to be much safer for him. So why shouldn't he go enjoy that?
That'd be his choice, obviously, but like,
well, yeah.
Why do we care about anything that you just said? I mean, like for me,
well,
I found
I'll tell you why, because
yeah.
I want to be able to communicate with somebody.
Okay.
I'll be damned if I can communicate with somebody unless I know who they are and where their assemblage point actually is. Because I won't know whether or not they're telling me this, they're telling me what they know, or they're telling me a story, or they're telling me a fantasy, or they're telling me something they want to believe. How can I know that? And will I agree with it? Will I run down that rabbit hole with them that they keep running down and chasing? Well, not if I'm looking at assemblage points, not if I'm looking at what they believe is real. Then I'll be able to communicate with whoever's actually there. I don't care who's there. I don't even care what they look at. Everybody has programming. I don't care particularly what they use to look at the world. What I care about is whether or not they know they're looking at it through the programming.
Okay, so you use another assemblage point, or moving to someone else's assemblage point to see how they see the world, so that you can actually have a conversation with them, or maybe can I say what the hell they agree with?
Well, not necessarily either one. Let's take Jesse as a for instance. Okay, we talked about this last night, so we can talk about it again here. Okay, look, I don't have any quarrel with Jesse. I mean, he can think any way he wants to. He can be as gay as he wants to. He can make gay his first and foremost idea in his mind. All that makes good sense. I've known people who did that. Some of them worked really well in life, and some of them didn't. It depended on them. So I don't really care about it. However, in the tank office, there's something else. In the tank office, we have gay people and straight people and people of mixed genders and all kinds of people walk through the doors. And if I can't go to where they are, how in the name of God am I going to be any assistance to them whatsoever in terms of communicating what they're experiencing in the tank? If I'm so damn proud of where I am, and I'm so damn locked into where I am, I damn sure not going to help them be able to be more agile in their thinking. What about what? Who cares? But if they're being stuck now because of not being able to because there's not enough hours in the day to complete the thoughts that they have, then golly wowzers, we've got to be able to help them out with that so that they can at least get done with the thoughts for today. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, you're speaking in terms of an assemblage point necessary for working in a tank office, the one where you can see how someone else assembles the world, so that well, you can see where they know, whether they know, or whether it's built on a flimsy ground and what's actually the hitch or the hitches you say in the get along or whatever the heck you call it,
Yeah.
the place that's
You don't want hitches and get-alongs.
yeah.
That's really bad form, guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
There's another part of the chapter, or maybe it's in chapter 3, communication, that talks about um, moving to another assemblage point and learning about yourself, almost like looking from the outside in.
Well, I don't know how you can do anything other than that, actually. One of the problems that we all have sooner or later is figuring out who we are, right? In other words, look, everybody says, okay, that I know who I am, I know what I'm about, I know what I'm doing, etc. And mostly that's true. However, for the most part, we also spend a great deal of time looking over our shoulders about whatever we think we should be doing, or we think we should have done, or something of that nature. And it's like, well, you can't really do that. I mean, you can, but it doesn't accomplish anything, merely because it's not something that really warrants doing. So rather than being all uptight about, I'm not doing this well, why not just simply think about that I'm doing what I've been programmed to do, and if I quit letting those programs run me, maybe something else could run me. Maybe I could be more deliberate.
Yeah.
But I won't know about how deliberate I need to be unless I can communicate with other people. That means I have to understand where they are and who they are. I mean, if I'm just going to work and say, yeah, boss, what you want me to do today? Hell, I can go over there and wash that car. Sure, hell, you watch me. I'm a car washing fool. Watch me do it. I could act that way, or I could say, okay, look, if I could go over there and wash some cars, well, I'm gonna go down and have me a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You go over there and run that car wash machine, and that little girl will come. I just hired her; she'll collect the money. Don't you worry about it. Those are two different ways I could go at something, two different assemblage points, right?
Yeah.
If I want to talk to all of those people, I have to take the approach of being able to understand who those people are. If I'm not even going to allow myself to understand who I am, I'm not going to talk to anybody. If I can't move my assemblage point, if I can't even identify how I assemble the world, how in the name of God am I going to identify how somebody else assembles the world? That doesn't make good sense. Well, maybe it does. It doesn't to me. Of course, I'm a hardhead.
Well, that makes sense.
But I'm a hardhead? Oh, yeah.
That part, yeah.
Everybody will agree with you about that. I'll guarantee it.
That's true. But if I'm going to see how someone else assembles the world, I have to see how I assemble it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. It may not be, but I think that it is. I bet that way on it.
Yeah. And then I guess that maybe raises the question of how I see how I assemble the world. How do I mean, I can use your eyes for that, and other people's eyes.
I don't see how you could do it any other way, because you can't see what you're looking with, really. At least I can't. They say there are people who can do that. I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
But they say there are people who can see the world using their own eyes, and well, okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. I don't see how it's done, but okay.
And I suppose that might raise the question of how I borrow your assemblage point, but maybe that's really just a matter of me.
Well, to begin with, you have to want it, don't you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The thing is that here's the thing. How did you learn how to count? How did you learn how to play baseball? How did you learn how to play checkers? How did you learn how to play Monopoly? How did you learn how to ride a bicycle? All of those things were things that you learned how to do, right? You didn't know how to do them before you did them, but yet you went back and continued to do them until you learned how. Okay.
Yep.
They were all naturally occurring skills that anybody and everybody have. That's really true, isn't it?
That's true.
Okay. So is moving the assemblage point. We all have assemblage points. So moving it is no particular difficulty if we only wanted to. If we don't want to, we're not ever going to. That's the thing. So the question isn't up for instance, for Jesse, for instance, it isn't a matter of whether he can, it's a matter if he wants to or not. If he doesn't want to, I don't blame him. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work, a lot of study and so forth. Maybe it could be that it's just too much for him. I don't know. And until he can decide that, what difference will it make for me to try to convince him otherwise?
Yeah.
Because it's up to him. It isn't up to me. It's not my damn business.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, maybe I do, but the part about it being a lot of work and a lot of study, maybe not so much.
Look, I've been doing this for 40 years. You want to tell me about work and study?
Yeah. Well, I know my experience fits into with the not the snap of a finger thing for me in terms of moving my.
Well, you had to want to too. But when you did it, you moved it right away, didn't you? And you finally said,
Yep.
"Oh, no, screw this! Enough of this shit." You know what?
Yep.
Just enough of the shit.
Yep.
This is it. I'm done.
Yep. That's.
When you got them there, it was stand back. Ken's done.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it. Just I'm done with that. I've paid about enough of a price on that thing that I did or how I look at things, and so
It was a pretty long event, Ken. That's all.
Yeah.
When you were ready, and it was over.
Yep.
Because you finally saw the scope and complexity and recognized what it was in you that this assemblage point word was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Well, you're just an old meanie then, aren't you?
What's that?
All right. Well, go on with it, Ken.
Okay. Well, let me bring Pat back in here to see if he's up to speed on the convo. Pat, you still on?
Yeah, I'm still up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I guess maybe my question was, and my problem with this, maybe it's my problem with my rewrite is, I'm expecting to snap my fingers. I know there are things that I don't like about myself and my personality and this whole attack mechanism that I have in my thinking.
Hey, Pat.
I'm expecting.
Pat, stop for a second.
Go.
What is the threat? I've asked you this for a year now. How about you telling me what in the world is the threat that you got to get all angry about? You fight about. What is that threat about?
I have no idea. Well,
yeah, you do. Don't tell me that stuff. About it.
There's certainly no need for it, is there?
Well, there must be.
But you do it.
I know.
Okay, no, slow down. Quit beating yourself up. So you do that. Okay.
I know.
Okay, no. You do that. Okay.
He keeps popping up and popping up and.
Okay. And you do that because.
I do that
because you're such a hateful person, right? Because nobody can stand you. Everybody hates you. And everybody says, "Oh, here comes Pat. Make that son bitch eat worms. We don't like him." Kind of like that, right?
I think that's what I think.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That's not true, dude.
No, it isn't, is it?
No, it isn't. I mean, nobody likes to cook the worms. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mind you eat them, but they if you're going to sit around and wait for them to cook them, they're not going to do that, Ken. No, they won't. They're just not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my frustrations lie in the fact that I can't instantaneously snap my fingers and move my assemblage point.
Well, if you get that one done, you let me know, okay? Because I want to know how you did it. I'm with. I mean, I think it's cool if you do it and everything, but it might be harder than that. I don't know, but it might be.
It seemed more of a process, as Paul was alluding to. For me, it didn't seem it was.
Well, I didn't want to do it quickly because I had enough trouble dealing with the assemblage point I already had, and so I just started doing things differently, But I don't mean I started going to the store from a different route, although that's fun. I didn't do it quite like that. I actually started to think about things differently. I started to define my world differently. And in other words, instead of saying, well, that guy makes me fucking mad, what I would do instead was I'd say, okay, hold on. Why is this guy doing that thing? Does he have the right to do that thing? Do I have the right to tell him not to? Do I have the right to even be upset that he does what he wants to do? There was a whole set of those things I had to go through. And thinking about it like that differently, what happened for me is my assemblage point began to move because I quit defining that old world to myself, that old assemblage point. I stopped defining it. It stopped working that way. How hard could that be, huh?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I you put those things that you said in the category of doing unusual things, but not unusual as in outlandish, just unusual as in that you're not things you typically you think differently, consider different.
Well, yeah. Doesn't cost any more.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit more, not a lot. Not that you notice or anything, but
Yeah.
a little bit.
So we talked about like young Luke growing up and figuring all that stuff out about, what he can do and what makes him happy and what makes him not so happy. And then having that being the assemblage point through which he sees the world up until, he decides that he's going to see it another way.
Yeah, kids do that a lot, That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Grown-ups, maybe not so much.
Sometimes they do. You'd be surprised. Yeah, you might be surprised. They get out there, they do it in boogie woogie, boogie loo or something. You never can tell about grown-up peoples.
Yeah. Okay. Well, questions on assemblage point? Pat, Ralph, Pam, anybody else?
I have a comment on assemblage point. And I think I was telling you, but I don't mind sharing with these guys. So like the other day when the girl Jenny, so like for Pat's sake, I've been listening to these guys for the last, I don't know how many, it's been 40 days. So I've been trying to kind of, think about how my programming works. And John helped me out with kind of, triggering a memory. And that helped unlock some, but it wasn't exactly the key. Like, oh, it changed, again, it was like chipping away at it. But then somehow, listening to Jenny's story about how she was, trying to reprogram herself and, these new programs and, some of the things like her blocks were like her parents and like an embarrassment or a feeling ashamed of her parents. And then all of a sudden I picked up on that. I'm like, something? I think I have a lot of that. I just never saw it like that, or maybe I don't want to say it, but hearing her say it, I feel like I moved my assemblage point. And it's been on my mind the past, I don't know, it's been like 2 days, and it just makes me think that, hey, maybe these things I was feeling because of, these thoughts I made as a kid, this embarrassment I feel, which it's not true, thinking about it as an adult, is giving me some peace right now, and I don't know if it's the thing that snaps your finger and makes it go away, you know what I mean? But it's a piece of it, you know what I mean? I think I moved my assemblage point a little bit. Did I get to the peak where I want to see the whole world? Maybe not yet, you know what I mean? But I definitely feel like I moved in that. So, like when it comes down to talking about assemblage point for Pat, I feel like that's how somebody else's story might regenerate in your head. and might, holy shit, that's probably what's going on to me too, or your version of it.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me, Ralph. I think, yeah, it does. It does to put an emphasis on communication in terms of what exactly happened when Jenny talked to us, especially in a place that resonated with you. Her having been somewhere and worked through something that's similar to what you had going on.
Yeah. So at first I started thinking that was also that peer, I forgot the term that we said it the other day too, that how the older sibling teaches the younger sibling.
Time bonding.
There you go.
Time bonding. I almost felt like it was coming down with that, like her time, she was passing it to me. So, you know what I mean? Like I felt there was some of that going on. She gave me years of her story that, you know what I mean, kind of in minutes made me kind of realize a lot of things,
Well, damn, look at that. Things actually working the way they're supposed to. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for Pat, maybe the story didn't happen for him yet, but there's got to be something that's driving him, because I think we all have an inner anger. You know what I mean? It's why are we feeling it? To discover that, I think, is when you can settle that. And I don't even know if you can settle it 100%, but I think that there's definitely ways of changing it, and maybe it's we're getting older, but whatever it is, I think the reprogramming, really kind of finding the focus. And I don't know, just like these guys are saying, there's got to be something that happens, something that's creating you to feel this way. And I don't know, past experiences, somebody else's past experiences. How does Pat get more past experiences to help him move his assemblage point? Like, what are options for him?
Well, he could do unusual things. He when that anger monkey, as they say in anger management, comes up, he could look at it. He can go out and get an anger buddy like me, and maybe I am his anger buddy. But kidding aside, you don't have to look at it the same way. You could. I've gone through lots of periods. What the hell was I doing in being angry for the last day or two or week? That's a different thought, because normally I never have had that thought. It would just be angry, and then it would fade, and then be angry again the next time. Like Pat, I perceived a threat, except it never was never quite like, hey, I'm perceiving a threat. It was more like, and Pat can probably identify with this, I was provoked.
Yeah.
Right, Pat? You're getting provoked. I understand that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Feel the being provoked.
Where
someone else is bringing it on.
Yeah, but
It's all in my head.
It's impossible, right? Nobody can provoke you. You must first, according to how thought works, deal with what you believe is real. The anger doesn't bubble up from nowhere. It emanates from there. And so then the question is, what do you believe is real? Because in that inquiry is the answer to the question of what you emphasize the word perceived to be a threat. Because I guarantee you there ain't no threat there. Nobody's, holding a gun to your head, or, waiting behind cars to shoot you up as you walk outside, or, bash your kneecaps in. None of that's happening. Right?
You don't know, it could be.
Well, never know. Okay. You
Ken,
got-
I don't know if you saw that chat or not, but Jesse's around if you wanted to talk to him.
see if we could. Who's Jesse with? He's with George. Jesse, talking permitted. What's up, Jesse?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. You?
No, not too bad.
Okay. Any difference between where we left off yesterday and today?
I've been looking at how I've spent I pretty much assembled my whole world based on this belief structure that I created when I was a kid. And it has lots of different facets. And one of the new ones I'm looking at is how I think I'm better than everybody. And by doing that, I keep myself isolated and don't feel like I have to respond, which is a pretty awful thing to be doing to people. But that goes in hand with the poor me's because if you don't see how great I am, then I need you to feel sorry for me, or I need you to look at me in a certain way. Lots of rules on how people are supposed to interact with me. It goes in with what you were saying about, or what John was saying is like, well, people have the right to be who they are and do what they're going to do. And why should it affect me?
You do, yeah, you do. But people also have the right to not want to deal with people who, well, insist on dealing only a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody has the right to do what they're going to do. It's like, I personally won't want to deal with it. And on that little bitch report, it's just like, oh, somebody was rude back to me. It's like, I'm the one being rude first. I'm the one that is creating my situation. And the poor me is, it's like, oh, it's not my fault. Oh, I'm not the one that's doing it. And I really had to look at that. I'm the creator of that, of what's going on.
That you are. Well,
For me, it sounds like this kid's moving. This guy's moving his assemblage point.
it's not something that I can say yet. I know where Jesse is because I've been in similar places where, kind of like Pat was saying, I can see it, but I don't want to do it, right? And I've been through that too. Boy, I can see this anger, and I don't want to do it, only to be off to the races the very next day or time I thought that someone provoked me. But yet I know, I have to say for myself that the reason why I held on to that, even though I got some glimpses of it, no freaking doubt, and I have no doubt that Jesse's getting glimpses of it, is because it was important to hang on to. And you say what you want about the value of being angry, because there's not probably much you can say about it, but I obviously had something to say about it, so much so that it took a while to put it down and have a different thought. That's the same issue with Pat. John asked Pat, what's the threat? Pat said, I don't know. And of course he does know, because he's the only one that would know. And he's the only one that could make a change. It's the same with Jesse. So, that's always a demonstration thing. That's always the point where people say, show me some. Okay, and I don't mean to like make light of it too. I've been where I've sat in that place that he's sitting. It's not a pleasant place to be, because in some sense, to me, it seemed like I was in a box and I was in a trap. And it's like, well, I'm talking about it. I can talk about it. And every time someone asks me what's it about, I can go back and talk about my belief in what I decided when I was young. And isn't that enough to get me out of the trap? No, it wasn't. Got out of the trap when? Precisely when I decided, fuck that. I don't want to be that. That's not, that's, it's almost like a break in like whatever value, whatever, however crazy this sounds, Ralph and Pat and Jesse, whatever thing I was hanging on to there, because you're hanging on to something if you're doing it until I broke that attachment. I think I can say a lot about, for me, that it has to do with being somebody and recognizing, shit, I'm more than this. I'm actually here to do something, and I'm just floating in the breeze and being angry at everybody, or maybe I'm here for a reason. Maybe I'm put here for a reason. Maybe enough of that fucking nonsense, Jesse and Pat. That's kind of how it played out for me.
For me, I hear in Jesse's tone, talking, it sounds different tonight. It's like he I don't know, like for weeks in the weeks past, he had this thing about his voice. More of these things he's talking about were coming out.
Yep.
Whereas now I hear him like more relaxed, more accepting of whatever it is he's got to accept.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, it's about as good of an experience, using the word good to mean that it would apply the kinds of energy that would need to be applied to give Jesse a way to check the value of that thought, right? Because the value of that thought right now is in a freaking epic battle. It's an epic battle because the value of that thought right now has got him out of the house, living on a roof. And boy, that's that's like, they're going some like rounds with that, how much you gonna hold on to that? How do you like?
It's also about holding on to your story.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like your story is who you think you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the antithesis of moving the assemblage point, huh, Pam? Because as long as you're telling yourself that same story over and over again, guess what? You're damned to be. What are you doing? You're reprogramming it.
Over and over, right?
Have you ever seen that Bill Murray flick, Groundhog's Day?
For sure. Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Man, I see that every freaking day. I just can't get away from the freaking movie. Ever since Bill came in the house and started talking to me about it, I've never been able to get past that. All the fucking time.
Babe, I got you, babe. Right, every morning at 7 a.m. the alarm clock goes off.
Oh yeah.
That I think raises the question of like that story, that internal dialogue. Oh, look, Terry put it up. There it is. We got it up here. The internal dialogue. Beta brainwaves. Talk to ourselves, brainwaves. I can't see. Let me just minimize this here. An ongoing recorder of what has already happened. Yeah, that does sound like the internal dialogue. The internal dialogue is the calculated result of computations from our existing programming. The internal dialogue is therefore consistent and holds current our world view. World view in place. I think that's what you were talking about, Pam. Our story, right? Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's about repeating. It's like when you go to therapy. You just tell your story over and over and over again. You know, same story, same story. Like it just makes the story like as if that's your identity, you know, and you don't get to change your assemblage point because you're validating it.
Yep.
Yep.
That's exactly what's
Yep.
happening.
Yep. So how do you, or how did you quiet down or shut off that internal dialogue?
Who do you ask?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good question, right?
Anybody.
Yeah.
I just turned it off. I like I said, I just started doing other things. I started talking to myself. If I'm going to talk to myself, talk about things that make sense. I went through, I don't know, maybe 100 years doing that. Who knows? It's a long time.
Ways to shut off the internal dialogue slide. Slow down the brainwaves.
Well, if you live in the tank office, you're going to do that. Whether you want to or not, doesn't make any difference. You're going to.
If you float regularly, you ought to be doing that too, though, although it seems to me that the internal dialogue returns.
It can. It really depends on what you're going to do with it, I guess. It can return, and it can come around and bite you in the behind and so forth. But generally speaking, it isn't about that kind of thing. It's really a lot simpler than that, really, I think.
Just don't think, as you said, simpler in the sense of I'll entertain different thoughts instead of those same record that just spins around.
Yeah, I'm not, well, I don't do the record spinning around thing very well to begin with. I mean, I'm just too damn hard to get along with. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that you need to have in your mind so that you don't get lost in all this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, it's good to keep it simple like that.
Mm-hmm. Simpler, maybe.
Yeah.
I had something I wanted to add on that one. If I might, Ken.
Yeah, please.
That might actually give Pat a bit of a hand because I have also have a history of seeing when people would ask me questions or things, I would see it as a threat. And something that has really helped me is I would have different people telling me, pointing out, like, look, what I'm doing is not a threat. I'm trying to find out, or I'm trying to solve a problem, or I'm just trying to know how you think about this, any number of things. And so what helped me was to use those degrees of logic to say, because my initial impulse was think, well, that can't be correct. That's false. So over time, something that would help me a lot was say, okay, let me treat what they're saying as though it's true. Mm-hmm. And let me do that over and over and over and over, because my impulse was to dismiss it.
Yep.
And so I just had to find room to let that sink in, which was doing an unusual thing for me, rather than just saying, well, I feel it or I see it, must be there, is to both and to seek out, well, how is somebody else looking at that? Am I missing something? Am I distorting what I'm seeing? Because what I realized is I was perceiving people either criticizing me or putting me down, all manner of things that weren't really there, and that was coming from me. But and folks had been telling me that for a long time, but I hadn't made the space in my thinking where that possibility could even get through.
Yep.
So in a way, I was borrowing their assemblage point, but in a way, I was also saying, okay, let me treat that as an actual reality, not something I'm just going to try on. Let me work up from there, and that was one thing that helped. when I would see certain reactions coming up.
Okay. Yeah. Me too. Definitely help to consider what was being said without just running the same instant reaction to what I thought or perceived as being said. Cool. What else? Any other questions, comments? People out there? Pam, Pat, Ralph, Jesse, anybody? What do you got, Ralph?
No, nothing. I was saying it's late, but I thought it was good with the assemblage point, and I want to see where tomorrow's top is going to be at.
Yeah, we'll keep with communication tomorrow. You know, we talked today about some. You know, we talked a little bit about communication today. Obviously, these fit together. Like, how am I going to be able to talk to somebody if I can't move my own assemblage point? Okay.
That'd be a good topic. I like it.
Cool. Anybody else? There being no additional questions, how about we see you all tomorrow at 8 p.m.?
Sounds good to me. Good night,
Cool.
guys.
Okay, right on.
Night.